when my HOA turned my yard into a cesspool of raw sewage and mocked me to my face. I spent 2 weeks plotting the perfect revenge they never saw coming. What would you do when 20,000 gallons of concrete is the only language they'd listen to? Drop a comment below with where you're reading from. I never imagined my quiet life would spiral into a stinking nightmare. It all began on a Tuesday when I stepped into my backyard and nearly plunged face first into a bubbling, brown mess. The stench hit me like a freight train. Raw sewage was spilling onto my land from somewhere. My cherished garden, 3 years in the making, was now submerged in filth. My workshop, where I crafted furniture, was wrecked, my tools drowning in muck. I couldn't believe it. This wasn't a minor leak. It was a catastrophe. I dialed the Pinewood Heights HOA emergency line right away. After 20 minutes on hold, Susan Carter, the HOA president, picked up. "Mr. Davis, I'm swamped today." "What's the issue?" she snapped, clearly irritated. I explained the sewage flood, and she let out an exaggerated sigh. "We approved some plumbing updates for the neighborhood yesterday. It's probably just a temporary glitch." "Glitch?" I shot back. "My yard's a sewer. This is a health hazard." "Don't overreact," Susan said coolly. "We'll send someone next week when the maintenance crew's free." "Next week? I can't live like this for days." "Well, Mr. Davis," she replied, her tone dripping with condescension, "maybe you should have considered drainage risks before building so close to the community line or moving into Pinewood Heights at all." Her words stung. Since I'd moved in 3 years ago, Susan and her HOA clique had made it clear they didn't think I fit in. My house wasn't as grand as theirs. My decade-old pickup stood out among their sleek SUVs, and I earned a living with my hands. I hung up and called the county health department, but they couldn't come until Friday, 3 days of this hell. That night, the smell seeped through my closed windows, keeping me awake. My dog, Buddy, wouldn't even step outside. I sat at my kitchen table, flipping through photos from last summer, my prize-winning tomatoes at the county fair, kids building birdhouses in my workshop. All gone now. The next morning, I traced the sewage flow uphill myself. Behind some shrubs on HOA common land, I found a fresh pipe spewing waste straight toward my property. I snapped photos and videos, then spotted Roger Ellis, the HOA treasurer, walking his pristine spaniel nearby. "Roger, can you check this out?" I called. He ignored me at first, but I persisted. "This pipe's dumping sewage on my land. The HOA put it in, right?" His expression shifted. "I don't know anything about that. Must be a county problem. Have you called them?" "Susan told me yesterday the HOA approved plumbing changes." I pressed. "She must have been mistaken," he said quickly, tugging his dog away. I was being fed lies, and they didn't even care. By day 3, my yard was a sewage pond, and the stench had neighbors complaining. To me, not the HOA. Susan had convinced them my system failed. That night, at the monthly HOA meeting, I brought my evidence, dressed in my best shirt, and faced a room full of neighbors who wouldn't meet my gaze. Susan delayed my speaking slot for 2 hours, droning on about lawn heights and mailbox colors. When she finally called me, she set a 3-minute timer. I plugged my tablet into the projector, showing the pipe photos. "The HOA installed this last week. It's ruining my property, my garden, my workshop, my home." Whispers rippled through the crowd. "That's nonsense," Susan cut in. "We didn't authorize that." Roger nodded. "No such project exists in our records." "Then why'd you tell me on Tuesday about plumbing changes?" I countered, bluffing. "I recorded our call." Susan's face flushed. "Recording without consent is illegal here, Mr. Davis. So you admit you said it?" I said no such thing. "Time's up," she barked, clicking her timer. A few neighbors shot me sympathetic looks as I left. One elderly lady even squeezed my arm. In the parking lot, a man approached. "I'm Tom Bradley from Cedar Lane. They did this to me last year when they built the community center. Needed a drainage dump. I couldn't fight them, sold my house cheap and moved. Susan's husband's firm bought it, fixed it, and flipped it for double." My stomach churned. Was this their scheme? Force me out for profit? At home, I saw Susan and Roger scoping my yard, scattering when they spotted me. Sleep evaded me again, but now it was anger, not the smell, keeping me up. I started documenting everything. If this was a war, I'd need a strategy. They had no clue who they were up against. 6 days in, the gurgling stopped. The flow ceased, but my yard was a toxic swamp. I called Jake Russo, a plumber a friend vouched for. "I need someone who won't back down from the HOA," I said. Jake arrived in a battered truck labeled Russo Plumbing. "We drain your pain." His jaw dropped at my yard. "This is criminal," he muttered, testing the muck. "This isn't just sewage. There's commercial-grade chemicals here." He dug along the sewage path and found a new, unmarked diversion pipe. "This was recently installed," he said. "It's rerouting waste from the community center here instead of the main sewer. Saved them $50,000. I paid him extra for a detailed report. "Watch out," he warned as he left. "These HOA folks fight dirty." My brother lost his place battling one. Armed with Jake's report, I stormed the HOA office, a pristine suite in our shopping plaza. Lisa, Susan's assistant, blocked me. "Appointments only," she droned. "This is urgent," I insisted, waving the report. "Email it," she replied, robotic. Through Susan's office window, I saw her laughing on the phone, feet on her desk. She met my stare and turned away. I left, fuming, but snapped photos of the office layout, details I'd need later. That night, an email blunder changed everything. The HOA board accidentally CC'd all residents. Susan wrote, "The Davis issue is handled. Deny everything until he caves. These blue-collar types can't afford lawyers. Once he's desperate, Carter Properties can push the cul-de-sac expansion." Carter Properties was Susan's husband's company. They were sabotaging me for development. I saved and printed the email, making backups. The next day, I invited neighbors for coffee. 5 came, including Ellen Hayes, who used a wheelchair. They rejected my ramp 3 times, said it'd ruin the look. "Cost me $7,000 to build it anyway," she said. Paul Kim nodded. "They fined me $500 daily for solar panels till I removed them, despite state law." We formed Pinewood Homeowners for Justice. I called my cousin, Ethan, who runs Davis Concrete. "These creeps need a lesson," he said. "I'm in." At the county records office, I learned the HOA never permitted the community center's plumbing. Better yet, their office would be closed for renovations next week. Meanwhile, the county fined me $100 daily for my unsightly yard, the mess they made. I watched Susan and Roger survey my lot with a man holding equipment, bolting when they saw me. That night, I dug deeper, literally, and traced the illegal pipe to the community center's spa. I compiled a binder, HOA Sewage Scandal. I filed complaints with every agency, EPA, Health Department, Building Safety, but they moved like molasses. My house stank, neighbors shunned me. Watching movers prep the HOA office for Reno, I saw Susan bark, "Careful with that painting. It's worth more than your salary." The security was laughable. Fake cameras, a flimsy lock. Another HOA letter upped my fine to $200 daily, threatening lawsuits. At an emergency homeowner meeting, I laid it out. "They're forcing me out for profit, and you're next." Ellen asked, "What's your plan?" I grinned. "They flooded my land with poison. Maybe their office needs a taste of that." Paul hesitated. "That's risky." "I've tried the rules," I said. "They break laws and win because no one fights back." "Don't help. I'll do it alone." Ellen squeezed my hand. "We've got you. Just watch out. Susan's tight with the cops." I called Ethan. "Still up for that delivery?" "Truck's ready," he said. "Quick dry industrial grade?" "You got it." My heart raced. Was I really doing this? But Susan's email, "Blue-collar types can't fight," lit the fuse. I planned every step. At 1:58 a.m., we struck. Ethan parked his relabeled truck blocks away. We picked the lock, fed the hose through the mail slot, and pumped concrete into Susan's office. Her desk, her files, her throne. I left a handprint in the wet mix on her desk, a signature. By 4:30 a.m., it was hardening, and we vanished. At dawn, a suit from the DA's Environmental Crimes Unit, Mark Evans, showed up. "We've been investigating Susan Carter for 6 months. Embezzlement, bribes, fake reports. You're our key witness." I exhaled, relief, not cuffs. At 8:30 a.m., Susan found her concrete tomb and screamed my name. News crews swarmed. I strolled up with Mark. "Arrest him," she shrieked. Mark flashed his badge. "Mrs. Carter's under investigation, fraud, environmental crimes." Months of evidence. Cops handed her a warrant, not me. Roger bolted but got tackled, spilling bank records, millions stolen. By noon, they were in cuffs. Neighbors cheered. Ellen got her ramp. Paul his panels. The concrete? No proof tied me to it. Cameras malfunctioned. The truck was untraceable. We know it was you. A detective winked. But no evidence, and no one's mad after what they did. The county fixed my yard. New soil, new workshop, HOA insurance footing the bill. Susan and Roger copped pleas, now cleaning up as penance. My garden thrives again. Mark sent me a concrete shard trophy. Sometimes the toughest problems need the strongest fixes. It sits on my desk, a reminder that even a quiet guy can push back hard. Pinewood's HOA reformed, and I'm a local legend. Was it worth it? Sipping lemonade with Ethan, watching my tomatoes bloom, I smiled. Revenge, they say, sets up solid.